All right, everyone. Welcome. This is your Learning Reaper panel. We are here for 2 hours, which is great because I'm going to walk you through a whole bunch of stuff and then try to leave tons of time in the back end for you to ask questions. My name is Dr. Jonathan Cressy. If you haven't been to any of my other panels, this is panel 2. I have 2 more that are coming up Saturday and Sunday. But I am a professional trumpet player who is also a university professor who teaches not only... Okay, so I got distracted by the... Okay, that's just annoying, but whatever. We'll deal with it. The crackling. Okay, so I am a professional trumpet player, but I am also a recording engineer, producer, label executive now. So don't boo me and out of the room. But I now run Fundamental Sounds, which is a record label and music production company. And we specialize in working with young artists. And what you guys were listening to when you came in was Dendrology, which is the debut album from Texas A&M University Kingsville Jazz Combos. I know that's a very, very long name, but that is what I am contractually obligated to call them. And that is their name, and that is their debut album. It is an album of all students, and all the works are by the students, and it is fantastic. So that's the kind of stuff that we release: jazz, pop, and classical music. So that's what I do. That's what my background is. My background is in classical music. I was a classical trumpet player for a very long time, but I do pop and everything else also. And so I crossed it out. So it used to be that no one knows about this thing. Now more people know about it. And what's interesting about Reaper is a digital audio workstation. It is very, very cheap. It's $60. I guess I could say, without getting into trouble, that technically you can hit still evaluating forever and it will still work. But I highly recommend spending the $60 because it's only $60 and that's the cheapest DAW out there, other than free. I would highly recommend using this DAW over things like Audacity, just because if you're going to do this, you might as well learn a professional software. And for this kind of money, that's pretty crazy. So let me give you a little bit of, not necessarily background on Reaper because I don't think anybody cares, but just so you know, this came from last year. Okay, this is 2021, and these are the skills that the audio jobs in gaming. And if you look up here, you can actually see that other than job experience and things that I have no idea, like WY, I don't know what WYs is, but I'm sure it's important. But they want you to know how to use Reaper. 38.7% of the job openings require you to know Reaper. We also know that other than Pro Tools, which is an industry standard, I have to say that, it's an acquired taste. If you've used Pro Tools and you work with Pro Tools, then you tend to like it a lot. I don't necessarily, but I do like certain parts about it. But Reaper is higher up than Pro Tools at this point. And there's a really good reason for that. Reaper is highly scriptable. Okay, so basically, if you are someone who loves to write code, you can actually script entire things in Reaper. And I'm going to show you one of those things. One of those, it's almost a program into itself. But you can do tons of scripting. And so this allows you to automate just tons and tons and tons of stuff. And for the game industry, when you're dealing with, like 1,000 lines of dialogue or whatever, maybe it's 10,000, you don't want to have to sit there and go through each one. You want to be able to program Reaper to be able to do certain things. And so it's incredibly scriptable. You'll also see here that the mentions of software suite requirements, you see Reaper is right up there at 28%. Pro Tools is 24%. Pro Tools is the industry standard mainly because of film. It's still the film industry standard of whatever. If you're going to do any kind of video work, a lot of audio is going to run through Pro Tools in some way, shape, or form. So that's something that, if you're interested in, I can always talk about that, next year. What else? We have 52% of the people want you to be able to use it right up there with Pro Tools. So this is pretty interesting evidence for how important Reaper is. Okay. So the other reason is because of price. So if you are like me and you're a small business, you pay $225, which is, more expensive than Logic, but not too bad. If you're an individual though, $60. Or you just keep hitting still evaluating forever like my students do. That's all they do is just hit still evaluating. And this is great because you get a completely fully fledged digital audio workstation, which you can even use to work in video. You can do all of that within Reaper for $60. It's pretty crazy. It's a great value, and it works really, really well. It is community driven, so there are tons of people on the Reaper forums that can help you do pretty much anything that you want. You can do. What else? It can be a little. It's not pretty to look at. I'll give you that. However, you can also use skins to turn it to make it look like whatever you want. There are people out there who have made skins for Reaper that make it look and function like Pro Tools. It's very interesting how that works. So this is huge. Price is big. Now, what are the things that you need for Reaper? Okay, the first thing you have to get is the SWS extensions. This is made by a group of people these are free, right? You can donate to them if you want, but their extensions make Reaper even more potent of a DAW. And you really do need them. If you want to use Reaper, you've got to download the extensions and use them. And they're pretty easy to install and all of that jazz. The stuff with Mac has gotten a little janky as of late because you have to constantly give things like security permissions, and it can be a little bit of an interesting move. But it's definitely what you need. The other thing, which is something that I just started, like literally last night, I found out about this, and it is called Repack. And what this is a script repository. So people will make scripts and they will put it up there, and it allows you to download them and install them into Reaper from within Reaper. And you ask yourself, like, why do I need this? Well, you don't really, but there are a lot of interesting things that, like, for instance, when I do editing, okay, and I'm going to show you how I do classical editing, I want to click an item. Right? So all the items, and you'll see them, I'm just trying to imagine in your head, the items are all these tiny little lines, right, on the thing, and you want to zoom in on one. So there's actually a script, when you click on that item, it explodes it to the entire screen. And then all you have to do is click off that item, and it shrinks it, and it blows up the next one. And it makes it really easy to do fine-tune editing with it. And I didn't even know I needed something like that. But I did, and it was awesome, and it all came from the Repack package. And so again, through the forums, I've read stuff, and people suggest this, and you can go through and you can look at all sorts of stuff. So now what I'm going to do is let's just dive in to Reaper itself. We're not going to do any more. Well, there's a little bit more. Well, here, we'll do this. Usually I put this at the end, but we'll do it now. So these are the big sites that you might want to look into when you have questions about Reaper. The biggest one is the forum. The Reaper, the main community forum, is huge, and you can pretty much find any answer you want. The Reaper blog, I don't know his name, but he does a ton of stuff on YouTube also now. And so they even have a podcast about Reaper that you can look at and see. Every time they release a new Reaper, there'll be a new podcast, a new thing showing you all of the neat things that they've done. And then you have Reaper Mania, which is another place where you can get a lot of good information. Yes?
Especially for specific issues, their documentation in general, just on the Reaper website, decent, good.
Yes, the documentation is great. And they have, so he asked if the documentation was good, not just the forums, but yes, the documentation is good, and they actually have an ebook that you don't have to pay for that you can throw on your iPad or your Kindle or whatever, and you'll be able to. I think it's called Reaper Power with an exclamation mark. So it's Reaper Power, right? But it's very good. I haven't had any issue. There are some things which I will show you that are a little different. Like whenever I was chatting earlier that I have to as part of my job being a label owner, I have to sort of be competent with every DAW out there, digital audio workstation, and they all work similarly except for Cubase, which is totally different. But the few niggles that I have, like, you can very easily get around them in Reaper, and it's pretty easy to understand. Once you've used a digital audio workstation, it's pretty similar. Like, there isn't a lot of crazy stuff going on. So let's actually look at this. All right. Escape. Okay, so the first thing I want to show you, and I know that's a blank screen at the moment, but it won't be in a minute. Actually, let's do this. Okay, so the first thing that I'm going to show you is I'm going to show you a program that has basically taken Reaper scripting to a huge level, and it's called Choler Classical, Choler Classical. And this is a, let me make sure it's going to open with Choler Classical. Excellent. This is a session from an album that I released called Brasiliana. It's a classical album. Okay, so you look at this and you ask yourself, like, why is this awesome? And what does this look like? So it looks like a normal Reaper thing. But what you see up here is you see this gray box and you see all of these colored ones, okay? And you see all of these little items. All of these items down here, they were all takes. So this is a classical album. So what we did was we ran through the piece, and then we went and we played pieces of the work that were isolated. And we might have played them a bunch of times. Like here, we played this one 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. We played that 11 times. And what this is, what Choler Classical is it's what's called a 3 and 4 point editor. This is huge. There is no 3 and 4 point editor on Mac. Okay? So think of a 3 and 4 point editor. How many of you guys have edited video? Okay. That's what it is. 3 and 4 point editing is video editing. Basically, right? You have your thing and you're like, okay, your clip list, right? You have your clip list and you're like, I want to go from here to here. And so you put it in and out, and then you go down to your main timeline and you're like, stick it there. That's a 3 point edit, right? In, out, in. But you can also define an in and an out, and then you can come down and define an in and an out and hit go. That's a 4 point edit. Okay? That is traditional editing at its finest, because that is, what we used to do when I was young, where I used to edit analog tape. That's what you did, right? You literally took a razor blade and cut the tape and then prayed it was in the right spot. And yeah, that was what you did. And this is what this is. And it's the only way you can do it on a Mac. It's the only way. Because all of the other 3 and 4 point editors are the Sadie Master System, which is for PC. What else? The Pyramix, which is for PC. All of those things. So if you're a PC person, right, then you don't need this. It's totally cool. Unless you don't want to spend $4,000 for Pyramix and you want to spend $60, then this is your game. This is the only game in town, right? So Choler Classical, although he does charge for a license for his scripts, but what you can do, and I'm not going to do anything in here because that would be bad, but like you can come in and say, oh, I don't like this part. Actually, let's just listen to this real quick. Let's make sure we can hear. Sorry, it's in stereo, and this is all in mono, so it's going to be weird. There it is. All right, so what if we didn't like that? We wanted to do something else. We could come in here, and we could make an in point. We could make an out point, like that, and then I could find a different take. Like I could come in here and say, oh, maybe this is it. And I could make this bigger so I can see it. And I make an in point and an out point. And there are hotkeys for this. And then you just make the edit, and it stuck it up there. And of course, this is probably wrong. Well, it wasn't wrong for... No, it was. Okay? But, so, like, I just made a 4-point edit. And then I can undo that if I want, and it goes back. And what's cool about this is it makes this edit, and I didn't disrupt any of my other edits, right? It shuffled it, it pushed it, so that I can go and edit something way over here, and then come back and edit something over here, and it's fine. Yes?
So the idea with the 4-point editor is that it will take whatever in and out that you've defined, and it will dynamically stretch or shrink it in whatever you want it to do.
No, what it does is it dynamically shrinks what you're fitting it into. Okay. It doesn't change like the thing, because in classical music, right, you're assuming everything is the same tempo. And so, you know, or that part that you're doing. And so what you're doing is you want to be able to move everything to enclose what you just changed, because maybe they did play it a little faster. And if they did, then you want this to scoot over, right? Or maybe it's this that scoots over, but either way, that's what's important. Now, pop music, this isn't a big thing, because in pop music, we do everything with a click track, which I'll talk about in my 4th lecture on Sunday. We do everything with a click track, and everything is done in time, and there's very little movement. And so you can do takes, and you can kind of just replace stuff, and it's okay. But in classical music, that's not how it works, right? You have a metronome in the beginning, right, where they're getting their tempo, but then once they go, they could speed up, they could slow down, they could do whatever they want, and I have to be able to do that within this. But what's neat is I have all of the takes. I have everything that we did, all of them, and I can choose from them, and I can very easily just drop things everywhere. It's fantastic. And this is something, Kohler Classical could only have been done because Reaper allows amazing amounts of scripting. Like if I bring up the script menu, you can't really read any of this, but these are all of the special key commands. Like they all have Kohler next to them. And so like there's just tons, and this is what this guy did. He went and he made all of these things and then comes back to create a completely new way of using Reaper. So this is hugely important. That's one of those things that I wanted to get through, how important Reaper can be because of how flexible it is. And that's why everybody really likes it. So this is Kohler Classical. If you're a classical musician who does a lot of recording of orchestras and of small groups and stuff, look into it. It's really, really quite nice. Okay? So let me get out of this. So the next thing that I wanted to do, what time? All right, we'll be fine. So the next thing that I wanted to, I don't want to be in Kohler Classical though. So let's look at that really quick. So this is a Mac. One of the great things that Reaper has, it has the ability, let's go to applications here. It has the ability to, how do I want to put this? Remotely install itself. They call it a remote. They call it a external installation, I think, or a remote installation. What that means is I have Reaper Normal. So let's find Reaper Normal. Where's Reaper Normal? There's Reaper Normal. It's right there. Okay. Again, I know it's hard to see, but bear with me. So that's Reaper Normal. But what I did in order to not mess around with my Reaper Normal is I made a folder called Kohler Classical, or actually called it CC Classical. And within this, I was able to make an entire installation of Reaper. So this Reaper installation, which I renamed just by clicking on this and renaming it, I renamed it Kohler Classical, so I knew that's what it was. And so Reaper is now in this little box. And whatever I do to this Reaper doesn't affect the Reaper that's on my hard drive. What makes this even cooler is you could put this on a USB drive, and if you walk into if you go to like a studio, you can plug that into the Macintosh and run Reaper. And you can store all of your plugins on it. You can put all of your user presets, everything. So you're running your DAW on their machine. It's fantastic. Yes?
I wanted to ask you that running this problem before, but sometimes you purchase a DAW, you have to authorize it on your computer, or if you ever have that problem.
So he asked if with Ableton and with others, you have to reauthorize the DAW, like the dreaded iLock for Pro Tools, right? It's like if you don't have your iLock or if you lose it, you're like totally SOL. Well, what's neat about Reaper is there is a particular. Let's see if I can find it in here. Yes, you have this. Here it is, right there. Okay, Reaper.ini. You will get this when you buy Reaper, okay? Because again, you could always do the like I'm not the still evaluating thing if you really wanted to. But if you buy it, you get Reaper.ini. When you create this remote install, you put that in the USB drive, and then it creates Reaper using your license. And then when you plug it in, it'll say license to you, and then when you take that USB drive out, it's gone. And you can have that license on your machine at the same time, and that's how I did this. So my Kohler Classical is a remote install in a folder on my hard drive, and then my Reaper is a normal install, and they're both using the same license. Because you can't use them both at the same time. Well, I guess you could, actually, but you probably wouldn't. Yes?
The Reaper doesn't care about like station limits or user limits on a license. Those limits.
Basically, yes. As far as I know, you're allowed to use as many as you want. Yeah. Okay. So this is really cool. Like the whole, like when I taught extensively as a university professor, I was, when I started, I was an adjunct, and I taught at York College of Pennsylvania, and I taught at Frederick, and I taught at Coppin State, and I taught at Montgomery College, and I could tote around a USB drive and plug it into their machine and run whatever sessions we wanted to run, and then unplug it, go to my next school, throw it in, and do the same thing. And that was fantastic. And why I really liked it and pushed this on my students was because they could afford it, and it was cross-platform. So I know Pro Tools is cross-platform, but it's not really. It works kind of okay on a PC. Now, I know PC people are going to tell me, oh, no, it works fine. It's okay, all right? But it's also super expensive. You know, you're going to pay $200 for a license, whereas this you're going to pay, and that's a yearly subscription license, not a, hey, I just bought it for that much license. So it's just cool to be able to do this, that you can just throw it on a USB drive, and you're not like creating an entire, like I know that there are people out there that like put their entire Mac, like their whole operating system on an external hard drive, and you can boot a Mac into a USB drive. Unless it's one of the newer Pro models, then you can't because there's security chips and stuff. But you used to be able to do that, and some people would do that, so they're carrying around their computer in their pocket. But for Reaper, it'll work for anything. And in fact, with that USB drive, you could put a instance of the Mac Reaper and an instance of the PC Reaper, and you could mirror them so they have the same settings. And when you go to a PC, throw it in, boot it up, you're ready to go. Go to a Mac, throw it in, boot it up, ready to go. Right? So there you go. It's really quite cool how this works and how I'm able to do this. The other neat thing about this is one of the worst things that you can do in the audio industry is update your program. Okay, so like if you update your program, you risk not being able to do anything. And this is incredibly important if you own a Mac. Okay, so here pro tip. If you need a new Macintosh, right? Like your Macintosh is about to collapse and die and it's awful, right? You have to make sure, one, that you do not buy the newest Mac. Okay, like if they come out like with their thing and they're like, hey, buy a new MacBook Air, right? So I bought this MacBook Air before the new operating system came out. Because with Macintoshes, if you buy the same computer, but after the new operating system comes out, you can't go back, right? And see, Pro Tools, being a professional, having to use Pro Tools still doesn't work with the new operating system. And it won't work with the new operating system until they come out with the newer operating system. And so you're always an operating system behind. And so you'll go to many professional studios and they're still running like 2009 Tower Macs that like take 25 minutes to boot up, and they're running like Pro Tools 11.3 because they know that that's going to work and everything is going to be fine. So the cool thing about Reaper, though, is you can use remote installs to test a new Reaper. So you can keep your old Reaper that you know works, and then you can test the new Reaper. It's pretty fantastic. Whereas if you update Pro Tools, you're pretty much SOL, right? You update Pro Tools and you better have the old Pro Tools lying around or you're in trouble, right? So that's pro tip. Don't update your programs unless you're absolutely positively sure that it's going to work, right? And of course, I totally didn't take that advice and I updated today. And so I just prayed that it was all going to work fine. But so there you go. So let's look at how I use Reaper. And we're going to do, I'm going to show you from beginning to end how you create a project, okay, and all of the cool things. So the first thing we're going to look at is the production of a project, okay? So let me open up this with Reaper and not Kohler Classical. All right, so this is a tune called Crystal Spheres. And just so you know what Crystal Spheres sounds like, let's do that real quick because we have some time. So this is Crystal Spheres. All right, so that's Crystal Spheres. So you now know that what you are seeing is a professional release. This was released, you can buy it, this is the thing, right? You can go stream it, whatever. So that's a professional release. This is where it started. So it started as this, and you asked me, what the heck is this? Well, good question. We're gonna come up here and we're gonna view tempo envelope. And this is what I taught the director of this band, Dr. Kyle Millsap, how to use Reaper in a very, very simple way, okay? And what he did was he created a click track. This is highly important. Whenever you are doing musical productions, you have to have a click track, okay? Don't pretend that they're going to know what's going on. If you are a musician, learn to play with a click track, i.e. a metronome, Okay? If you're a drummer, you have to be able to do it. So do it. Now, what we see here is we have the click track source. So this is just a MIDI click track, like, you know, a metronome thing that's in Reaper. What you see here is what is called an envelope. Okay? An envelope is your automation. And what he's doing here is he's saying, okay, we're going to start out at 84 beats per minute. And then we're going to come up here and we're going to go to 176 beats per minute. Okay? And over here we have a slight retardando from 84 to 42. Okay, actually let's go back to the actual beginning of this. Because okay. In fact, hold on. Let's do... Okay. So what you just saw me do there is this is the region marker manager. And what the other thing that you have to do when you're in production is you have to lay out everything. So if this was a pop production, you might see something like click starts or click begins. And then it might be head, right? Or verse 1 or whatever starts your tune first. Maybe it's a chorus. Maybe it's a chorus first chorus thing or something. And then you'd have verse 1 and then chorus 1 and then pre-chorus and all this other stuff. And it would all lay out and they'd all be markers. The reason why you need to have that in a production is because you need to be able to, when you're recording, to go all over the place. You can't be hunting and pecking for things. You've got to have it. So we established the main tempo, he did all of the tempos, and then by measure, he went in and put all of the markers in. Everything that was important was in there. And he made all of his tempos via this automation or tempo envelope. And what that gave us was this. I won't punish you that much. This is the beginning. This is what, you know, when they're playing everything. And then when it gets to... it moves up here, and then when it goes to like here, it's slow again, right? Okay, this is highly important. So what you can do in Reaper is you can then, well, you can do this in any DAW, but what we can do is we can actually export this as a tempo map or as a MIDI file that contains all of the markers and all of the tempo automation and all of the time signatures, and then we can actually export the click track itself. Why do we need to do this? We need to do this because his studio where we recorded this is a Pro Tools only studio. Right? So was I going to teach him how to use Pro Tools where he would have to pay for it? Absolutely not. I'm going to teach him how to use Reaper. He creates the click track, and then this is what you can do. Once the click track and all of these points have been made, all right, I got Pro Tools sitting here. Let's open up a recent session. Here is a blank Pro Tools session. See? It's blank. There isn't anything in it. And I can come in and I can go import MIDI. I go find my Crystal Spheres MIDI. Let's see if we can find it in here. Oh, it's in here. There's my crystalspheres.mid. I open it. It says, where do you want me to put it? I'm going to put it in a MIDI track. We're going to import the tempo map and the key signatures, and we're going to hit go. And now I have all of his markers. And then when I come in here, I can also come in here. Oops. Let's go to here, and we go, here's my Crystal Spheres click dot wave, and I can drag it in here like this. And now, yes, you can use it. Now I have the click track. In fact, I have to look here. Okay, so we have it start there. Of course, this is playing through my speaker now all of a sudden. There, here we go. So now what I did was we basically have the click track, and it'll line up with all of the markers. This is imperative because now you can flip between different DAWs without having to worry you're losing your markers or you're losing your time signatures or any of your click tracks. So we tracked this entire album in Pro Tools. And then I can take that Pro Tools album, so this is what we've done. That's what Reaper can give you. I could have put this in Logic. I could have put it in Ableton. I could have put it in FL Studio. I could have put it in anything. And it would bring up all of this information, which is vital for being able to do this. So once it was tracked, and I'll just close this session. We'll go back to Reaper. Once it was tracked, I happened to mix it in Pro Tools, and I did everything in Pro Tools, but I decided for this lecture, hey, let's just do it in Reaper. So I can come up in Reaper, and let's open up the, hold on a sec, not new project, open project. And then we're going to come in here, and we're going to grab let's just start with this. Okay, so now we have the click track. It's still in here, just like what we had before. Whoops. Why'd you do that? Go back. Okay. Yes, I know. Let's just do this for right now. And now what I can do is I'm gonna show you how I basically just drug all of the files back in. So here's my rhythm track. This is something that in Reaper is very cool. So in Reaper, you can create folders. Now this is something that every DAW can do now, right? Logic, Pro Tools, everybody does it. Reaper did it first and has always done it. And so what I've done is I've put in I have my rhythm section, main. This is a main folder track. And then under that, I have drums. And within drums, I have the kick and the snare. And then within that, I have another folder track called overheads, which is just my left and right overheads for my drum kit. So what was interesting about this particular album is that this tune, Crystal Spheres, is a trumpet ensemble tune. Usually that means only trumpets, right? Well, they decided to add, or this tune has a rhythm section to it with a bass. And so we actually put the drums in a room, and the bass in another room, and the trumpets in another room. So they were all separate, but they were all hearing each other, and it was all played at the same time. But this allows me to then mix everything separately. And so what we have here for this is we've got a rhythm folder with my drums, my kick, my snare, my overheads, and my bass. This is my rhythm section for a jazz band. And all I had to do was drag the audio files in. That was it. And because we had the tempo map from the very beginning, everything just lined up. And it was just there, and it was ready to go. You'll also see, if I bring back the track manager, this is another really cool thing about Reaper is you can decide what you want to see. So if you want to see all of these things in the mixer, and I bring up the mixer, here's my mixer. I can see all of my stuff, and even in the mixer, we have folder tracks. So you can see sort of the hierarchy of everything. If we so I can say I don't want to see any of those. Hey, look, now there's nothing in my mixer. Right? So this is something that's really, really powerful. And as I come in, you'll see things populate. I can even open the brass section or close it and decide whether those are going to be seen or not seen. All of these things can be done directly from this track manager. Yes?
So this has plugins.
Yeah, I'll show you.
Is it open source all the time? Is it usually like verified plugins?
So it comes with plugins that are not open source, but I don't think they're open source. Maybe they are. But it comes with plugins that are built into the system itself. But it uses every version of plugins except for AAX plugins, which are Pro Tools specific. So you can use audio units if you're on a Mac, or you can use VSTs or VST3s if you're on PC. And those are up to you to use.
I wanted to say that it seems like a lot of power is like the specific coding and like marking and tagging and so on and so forth. Do they? So I would hope that the plugins would then be able to access all these, access all of these folders and such. Or is that common? Where, like, let's say you wanted to a plugin that, or even just a function that will stretch, skew, or sorry, stretch, squash, and pitch parameters, right?
Mm-hmm.
Does that like immediately have access to your markers and immediate like? Marker A to C, I want this plugin to do this.
Right. So the way you would do that would be like a typical DAW, which would be you would put the plugin on whatever track you wanted it to work on. Or you could put it on, this is another powerful thing that only Reaper has, is like, for instance, I can grab the bass file here, and you can actually put, let's see, item processing, where is it? Well, I'll find it in a minute. But you can actually put plugins on the item itself before it gets to the mixer. So just as quick, the way a typical DAW works is you have this, which is called the edit window. The edit window is your tape recorder. This is where you record everything, and this is where your items are, your media items, anything that's there is in your edit window. And it's how you move things around in time, okay? The mixer window, so the edit window feeds the mixer window. Does that make sense? So it's like when you hit play, it plays from the edit window into the mixer window. The reason why we have to think about this way is because a digital audio workstation is a digital representation of an analog thing, right? So this is the mixer, and then if I had a tape recorder connected to it, that would be the editor window. This would be the mixer window. So plugins exist in the mixer. Yes, you can access them from the edit window, but let's forget that you can do that, right? They exist in the mixer. So the edit window basically feeds the top of the mixer window. See how we have all these up here? These are plugins. So they feed down into the mixer window. So what you would do is if you wanted it to work on a particular item, Reaper allows you to assign, they call them effects, but that basically means plugins. They allow you to assign plugins to the item. And then it allows you to automate all of the functions in that plugin as any other DAW would, right? Using your markers and all of those things. It's also scriptable, right? So yeah, you could do all of that, but it would be through automation envelopes. But yes, you could basically do all of that. Don't ask me how, but you could. I am not a coder. I rely on other people to do that for me. But that's important. It's important to understand that we have plugins that come in through here, okay? And so I basically came in and I organized. It kind of looks like a mess, but the way I organize things is like, here's the click track. I don't need this click track anymore, so I can mute it. But now it's here, and I don't want to see it. And in every other DAW, I couldn't get rid of it. Like in Pro Tools, if you hide it, it disappears from everywhere. So I just take it away. So even though it's not viewable, it's still there and it's still playing and you can still do stuff to it, right? One of the really stupid things about Pro Tools is if you want to edit like a group of tracks together, so let's say all the drum tracks, but for some reason you don't want to see the snare drum, I don't know why you would, but let's pretend, right? If you hide the snare drum and you do a bunch of edits, that hidden track has no edits done to it. It's like it doesn't exist anymore. And then when you bring it back, it's all wrong. But in Reaper, you hiding something, not seeing it, does not mean that you are not doing things to it. So if it's part of a group, so basically if you wanted to edit your drums and only wanted to see, let's say, the kick and the snare, because those are the ones that have the most impulses, and you didn't want to see the overheads or the 20 other microphones you had on everything, you could hide all of those, and in the group, it would be fine. They would all get edited the same. And that's another really powerful thing with Reaper. So here we have all of this stuff, and this is just the track. Let's see, I don't think I did anything to it. Maybe I did. Hold on. So as you can see, you can embed the folders, and folders act like auxiliary buses. By the way, if I'm saying anything that you don't understand, please raise your hand and tell me, and I will answer your question, right? Because this is a lot of stuff and it's a lot of tracks. But a folder acts as an auxiliary bus. What that means is anything that's in the folder, right? So here's the flugelhorn folder. If I solo the flugelhorn folder and I hit play, so we're hearing just the flugelhorns. Right, with a little bit of trumpet in the background. But I can also just solo flugelhorn 1. Okay, he sounds bad, sorry. All right, no offense whoever played flugelhorn 1 or flugelhorn 2. But so it acts as a bus. So all of these are feeding this track. So for instance, I can put individual plugins on here, or I can say, well, I want just the whole group to be affected, so I could put plugins just here. And then the brass section here is again being fed by the flugelhorns and the trumpets. So basically in my head, it lets me split everything up. Instead of having, so if I want to, like, for instance, control just the brass, I can go to this track because this is all of the brass. So like if I come in here and solo this, let's go to here. It's all of it. But there's no rhythm. Right? If I just want flugelhorns. Right? So it allows me to organize the session, and it allows me to affect larger groups of things. Because when you are working in a DAW with a computer that may or may not have limited CPU, you want to try to do as many things to a group of things as you possibly can. Right? Because the more plugins you have, the more latency is going to happen. And if you're tracking, that can be a big problem. So, or if you're doing like a live stream, like if you have like 50 plugins on your voice track and you're doing a live stream, your voice will be delayed and people might be able to see it, right? It might be up to 30 milliseconds depending on how fast your computer is. And so you want to do things to like large groups of stuff to divide the power up. And so that's what I'm able to do here. And then at the very end, you see there was a mains track, but then I have my reverbs. And those are just the reverbs that I used for the tune. Okay, for the reverbs, as you can hear now, it's all dry. So it's just all dry. There's no room. And it's hard to tell because you're hearing it in the room here, right? So you've got the room reverb here, but there are none of those in here, and I'll show you the reverbs in a second. So this is how I laid out the tracking after everything had been edited and ready to go. This is how I laid it out in order to mix it. So then we can come in here and we can open another project, and I'm going to show you this function here. Open new project in new tab. Let me see, did I set this up? Hold on a sec. Preferences, accessibility. Zoom. Keyboard shortcut. Control. Okay, here we go. Haha. Okay, so down here, open new project. Open project in new tab. This is another thing that not any other DAW does. I think Pro Tools does it now. Possibly Studio One does it also. But here is the actual, where are we? Oh, here it is. The mix. And so when I zoom back out, what you're going to see is up in the top here, we have my tracking and we have my mix. And they can coexist, which is pretty cool. That means you can have multiple projects opened at the same time. Okay, so now what I've done is you see here, now my reverb has some tracks here. This is really cool. So in Reaper, you can actually make a track record, like you can make the track record the output of the channel of the mixer. So what I did, because I didn't want to bring my, so I used some UAD plugins, not sponsored, but I didn't want to bring the big box. The problem with UAD plugins is you have to have a box that lets you use them, right? And I didn't want to bring it. It was too much stuff. So I printed the reverb. Okay, so this is what it sounds like now. So now you're hearing actual reverb. Let's go here. So you hear the echo? That's the reverb. If I come in here and I mute these, this is what you heard before. No reverb. And so what I did was I can actually set, if you come into the record panel here, let me zoom in. All right, I can come in and I can say record output. And what this does is this lets me record the output of the mixer, the mixer window, back into the track on Reaper. This is highly awesome, because then in old DAWs like Pro Tools, what you have to do is you have to create a new audio track, and then you have to send the audio from the track that you want to record to that new audio track through an auxiliary bus in order to then hit record and then have it show up and be in time. It's a hassle. Okay, it can be done, but it's a hassle. This way, if I wanted to, right? Like if I wanted to print all of the stuff, basically say I love my mix, I love exactly what is part of it. It's fantastic, and I just want to make everything permanent. I could go in and I could set up each of the tracks to record its output. And what it would record is it would record the sound coming from the edit window, so the track that the music. It would record the music going through the plugins, going through all the automation, including volume, and it would spit it back out as another instance of something on that track. Okay? And then you could flip back and forth. You could say, hey, I want to listen to what all my plugins were like. Hey, I want to listen to what it sounded like without the plugins. And you could go back and forth. That's how powerful this record output is. And I use this record output a lot for mastering. Because what it allows me to do is it allows me to use external gear like equalizers and compressors and reverb units and all of that stuff, feed it into Reaper and record the result. But then at the same time being able to flip in and out of what was recorded and what wasn't. Like what it used to sound like and what it sounds like now. So it's super, super, super cool that you can record outputs. So like for instance, like let's try that. All right, zoom back out. So like just for instance, let's record from, I don't know, let's record from here to here. That's far too long. That is a minute. Let's just record 38 seconds. So let's go from here to here. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'll hit record on this. The record is set to output. I'll unmute it because if it's muted, then you won't be able to hear it. And then when I come down and I hit record, you're seeing it record here. Right there. So it's recording on top of it. And then I hit stop, and we'll say, sure, save it. Look what it did. These are called take lanes. And so basically what it does is it allows me to choose what I want to be my main, what I hear, what's coming through the main bus, what I want my main take to be. So what I just did was I created a second take lane. So this could be something different. I think this has got nothing on it. No, it does. No, it doesn't. So, but what it allows me to do is it allows me to create multiple versions of something using different plugins and have an actual print. This is important. One day, Reaper won't exist. One day, Pro Tools won't exist. One day, Ableton won't exist. And you will be stuck. So a lot of my early work was done in a program called Spark XL. Spark XL was a program that died in 2000 and I want to say 4. Okay? I wasn't smart in 2004. I was a child, okay? And I thought that Spark XL was going to be around forever. It was a professional thing. Why would it go out of business? It doesn't make any sense. All of these important people use it. And now I have like 15 to 20 projects that I will never be able to open ever again. I've got nothing. 0. So if one of those artists came up to me and go, you know that thing that we did like in 2002? That was really great. Can we like remaster it? No, you can't, because I can't get at it, because I was dumb. Yes? I could if I could find a PowerPC Mac that worked, then found the program which I think you could find. The internet is the archive of all, so I'm sure someone in here will be able to like, no, it's right here. But like, you can find it. You get the PowerPC Mac and run it, then yes. And this is what I would have to do. I would have to print all of the takes of everything, so I had it. So I had the audio files, right? And so, for instance, as an aside, okay, because we've got some time. Yes. It is kind of like a stem. No, that's what stems are. Here, I'll show you. Here's an example. So let me find. Okay, we'll just use these guys. We'll go to their album, and we'll go to nope, that's the master. Let's go to the sessions. Let's go to. We're doing Crystal Spheres. All right. So here's the Pro Tools session. Look at my audio files. And I go and I click Date Modified. Here we go. Where is it? Yeah. Actually, let's do it this way. Okay, here we go. So here we have Crystal Spheres Mix 1, Mix 2, 6. 6.1, 6.2, 6.55, 6.55. So every time I make a mix of something in Pro Tools or anything, I print it. That way I have literally a physical undo. If I want to go back and say, oh, I really liked that previous mix, I don't have to go, gosh, I really hope I remember what that was, right? It's there. And it's basically like creating a stem of all of the plugins, all of the automation, all of the stuff you did. And when you work, you need to do that. That is the archival way of doing it. You have to have the original. You have to have all the project and stuff. But then I would go in the final thing, the final mix, I would go in and I would bounce or print every track in time with silence. Does that make sense? Like you go, like if you've got like a MIDI bloop in measure 1 or at marker 1 minute and a MIDI bloop at marker 20 minutes, there better damn well, pardon my language, there better be 19 minutes of silence between those two. Printed. Because what you want, someone like me, if I'm trying to recreate your tune, you want me to just be able to drive everything into whatever the new DAW is, and it's all aligned perfectly because the silence aligns it. Right? Too many people will go in and go, oh, well, no, I'll just bounce those little pieces. And then they send me their project to mix, and I'm like, well, where do the pieces go? Like I had a hip hop artist who's really great, and it was really funny because he sent me all this stuff. And here we are tracking, and he's doing all of his things, and then he looks at me and he goes, I think that snare hit's in the wrong spot. And I'm like, it's in the wrong, what do you mean it's in the wrong spot? It's like, it's right on the marker marked snare, right? Because he gave me like the little bits and pieces, and so I lined them up with his markers. And he's like, oh, right, I forgot, I moved it. And so we had spent like 3 hours tracking, and he just realized that everything is in the wrong spot. And so again, when you bounce things out or when you print them as stems, you want to make sure all the silence is there so it locks it in time and no one can screw it up. And Reaper makes that the easiest. Well, I won't say it's the easiest. I think Studio One is like super easy. Like there's like a button that says stems, and it just like spits out stems, although I have had really hard time with that occasionally. With Reaper, I just set all of my tracks to record output, set the time frame, hit go, and go get some coffee. And when I come back, I've got all of those files in the project. So they're in the project, frozen in time with all of the automation, all of everything. And then from there, I can then bring them into a new thing. Yes? You're talking about the MIDI VSTs for instruments? Yes. Yes. Absolutely. And gosh, please, if you do anything involving MIDI, print your instruments. Okay? Here's another scary thing. I published a tune called Monolith, which is trumpet and electronics, but it's like almost dubstep in a way. And the composer, I wanted to mix it. Right, the composer mixed the file that the trumpet player was playing with, and I was like, hey man, it's kind of cool, but it's not really great. Can you just send me the files? And he's like, well, all I have is the Logic project. And I'm like, okay. So I opened it up in Logic, and it turns out one of the things that he uses is from Contact like 9. And it's like a Glock, I don't know, something like a cowbell or something. And I'm like, hey man, could you print those tracks for me? Because I can't download Contact 9. It's gone. That sound is gone forever unless it's on your hard drive. And he's like, yeah, I noticed that. I got a new computer, and I basically got rid of all of that, and now I can't download it again. So that tune has been lost to time. Now, granted, we could probably find something that sounds sort of like it, right? But it wasn't what he intended. And it was because he didn't bounce his stems. He was like, no, I don't want to do it. And then here I am stuck with a tune that I can't work with, right? Because all I have is his stereo mix. So it's very important, and it's really neat that Reaper allows you to do that. Now let's look at, real quick before we go to just like flat out questions and all sorts of stuff. Let me show you a little bit when it comes to automation. So if we go to the brass here, hello brass. Let's make this bigger. Okay. Maybe it's not brass. Maybe it's, oh, it's probably in here. Okay. Oops. So this is what's called an envelope. Envelopes in Reaper are automation. They appear down below, but you can right-click here and you can have it show up on the actual track itself, if you'd like. But as you can see, what I've basically done here is we have its starting volume, which is 0 decibels. And then at some point, I wanted flugelhorn 1 to go up 3 decibels. And so what I did was I drew those in via a pencil. Okay, one of the quick ways is you can actually use the marquee tool and highlight an area, like I'm going to highlight this, and then you can come in and you can move the automation if you wanted to. But this is automation. It's called envelopes, and that's something that a lot of people find different in Reaper, is because you can have an envelope of pretty much anything. We can do volume, pan, width, volume pre-effect, pan pre-effect, width pre-effect, mute, trim volume, and then if any of the, if I had plugins on this, there would be an entire list of all of the plugin attributes that you could then automate also. Automation is fantastic for when, I mean, it's actually necessary for making sure you have balance of everything. You can also write the automation using, so if we come in here and I click this button, if I hit ARM for recording and I had a control surface here, so Reaper uses Mackie Huey control surfaces, which is sort of the standard. And you can use the control surface to control the fader or the pan knob or whatever, and it would write your automation to that track, meaning it writes this. Now, in the end, again, if I'm going to print this track, I would want to print its output. I would want that to include the automation happening. And that's what would happen if we printed, if I went in and said, okay, I want to record flugelhorns. So I can click on here. Whoop. Now that's interesting. Oh, I know where it's coming from. Okay, so I was using the record input. So if we go record output and I go to mono, because it's a mono track, then when I hit record, and I have to make sure the input is on no input, testing. Okay, so, and if I come in here, I can go in and, you know, just start recording. So let's see, where's our first volume change? Let's just start here. And now if I hit record, whoops, undo. I had armed another one. Anyway, sorry, I apologize. I had armed another one. I had forgot that you have to make the input. I have to make the actual input for to record the output. But what I can do is I can print all of the automation, which is what you want to do when you're archiving everything. Now, last thing that makes this really cool. All right, I'm going to close this, not save it, and I'm going to close this other project. Now, we're going to open the master. So far, you've seen Reaper in production, where we put in all the click tracks, all the tempos, all the markers, everything. Then we used Reaper to mix it, using that click track it and mix it. Now, what you can do is you can come in and let's look at the master. So here is the master. Okay. What's interesting about this, let's find out what I have on here that is a UAD plugin. Okay, whatever. We don't need this. Offline. Okay. So now what you can see is the master. This is how I work with how I use Reaper to master. I have a main folder, which is where I would print everything if I was printing my masters. I just put them up here, okay? I didn't print this master. Okay, Then I have the processed track. This is what I'm putting all my plugins on. And then I have the original track, the OG track, the one without plugins. So for instance, I can do this now. So if I come into here, okay. So I have my limiter. You don't really need to know any of this, but I have an EQ and a limiter basically. So let's say I want to hear what my original sounded like. You know what's really interesting in Reaper, which is also super cool, is that you can solo muted tracks. So I've muted both tracks. I hit play, nothing happens, right? You can't hear anything. But if I solo this track, okay, so this is incredibly awesome because now look what I can do. I can come in and say, oh, I want to play here. I can listen to the original. I can listen to my master. So I can compare and contrast what I basically did to the music. That's incredibly important in mastering. You have to be able to go back and forth. And the fact that because you can actually solo muted tracks in Reaper, it's fantastic. You know what the other cool thing about this is this isn't a bounce. So I can double click on this and interesting. This is the project. This is the mix. This is Crystal Sphere's mix. So what I did in the master was I didn't bring in a bounced folder or file of the stereo mix. You can actually import projects within projects. Right? So you can have sub-projects of everything. So let's say you create a really cool sound effect for something. You can save that as a project, right? And then you can put that project into other projects and it will play it. And then if you're like, hey, this sounds really good for this particular project, but I need to alter some stuff, you can double click on it like I just did, and it opens up, sorry, don't have the UAD plugins plugged in, it opens up the mix right in front of you, and you can alter it, and when you exit out of this, it will reprint it back into the master. So when I click on this, it'll freak out. Well, it didn't because I didn't change anything. But if I changed something, it would then go, okay, and it would sit there and it would bounce out the thing and then plop it back into your mastering project. So this allows you then to basically have one project for your entire album. This is just one tune, but you could have an entire album's worth of projects, worth of songs, and you could go into each project and fix it. Bless you. Correct. Does not alter the original at all. So you could go back, and if you go back and alter the original, when you open the master, it'll go, hey, that's not the same one, and it will rebounce it and put it in. What do you mean by that? Mm-hmm.
Until it's the album you're selling or the single that you're selling or something that you're uploading for somebody to listen to, keeping it in project form kind of becomes the most effective thing to do.
Correct. As long as once you have finished, you back everything up, because eventually Reaper will go away and you won't be able to get at it. Yes? Right. Well, okay, so what happens in the project? So what he asked was, and this is, correct me if I'm wrong, he asked is, like, if you do it this way, will it still run efficiently? So Reaper is not actually playing the project. So what happens is as soon as you import a project in to Reaper, it will say, hey, okay, you want this project, and it will bounce the project. So this is actually an audio file. It's a temporary audio file. Right, so that it's playable and it's perfectly okay, because that's one of the other things that Reaper does. Reaper allows you to populate a project with multiple sample rates and multiple bit depths. And so you could have like one that was in 44.1 and one that's in 48 and one that's in 96, and it bounces it all out, drops it into your project, and then on the fly it'll change the sample rates up and down. I don't recommend doing that because that's not the highest quality thing you can do, but it does help when you're trying to compile things from a whole bunch of different people, and it's not always correct, right? So this is actually a bounce of that other project. Yes.
This is where my question. And you have so let's say you take out this snare, or you can assign the snare another someone close to that. Is this set or is this
Ah, I see what you're saying. With this one in particular, you wouldn't be able to do that unless you were dropping. So you can drop projects on top of one another, and they will become a take lane. So you could have multiple projects as different take lanes. I won't do it now because it'll take 12 minutes for it to actually print the track that it was on. But you could do that, and then if you were altering each one, you could go and do it. Or you could put them side by side. However, I don't want to. This is another thing. I don't want to say that you can't do it because I haven't thought of how to do it yet, because that's not in my workflow. Like I'm showing you what I do, and so I'm sitting here going, well, this is just how I do it. There very may well be a setting somewhere that allows you to do that. I just haven't found it because I haven't found a need for it. But yes. Uh-huh. Right. Unfortunately, no. I haven't. I was the closest I ever got was working like on early stuff with Call of Duty a long time ago, but that was a long time ago. And no, I didn't work. I've never really worked heavily in the music in the game industry. But from what I understand, people use this all. In fact, if you look up the YouTube video of the Foley of Doom, they will like. There's a YouTube video of people like crack, like this is a bone cracking, and they're cracking something, and then like they're like smacking cantaloupes and doing all this stuff. If they pan out to the guy running the DAW, and it's Reaper, and that's what you see them using. So unfortunately, I can't talk much about it. Like that's one of those things though that I would love to learn more about, only because I don't know how one puts their audio into I don't know what that secondary step is to go from audio DAW to whatever it is that then gets to the game. Absolutely, go ahead. So there you go. Learn Wise or learn Fmod. I don't know. I'll look at it and I'll learn them and find out. Who knows? Yes. All right, hold on one second. Could we close the door? Because I'm with the masks, I'm having a hard time hearing everything. Uh-huh. Yes. No, because each take lane can have its own automation. Yeah, so you could basically have a new take lane and not use the automation that you were using before. As far as I know, you would have to set it up. Like, you'd have to click on it and set it, but it's not a default action. But yes, but it can be done. Yeah. So you don't have to. I mean, you don't have to still apply. Or you could even go just as far as, like, if we... I don't want to do it in this one because it'll try to rebounce it. But if I open the project, new tab in the mix... Did I... Hold on. Oh, I hit the wrong button. Sorry. So, like, if we come in here to the base, I make it bigger, and I open up the trims. Oh, there is no trim in the base. Where was the trims? The trims were here. There we go, volume. We make it visible. We can also turn it off. So that would be the other thing that you could do, is you could turn them off once you've decided to do that. However, you can also script some of that stuff. So there's a mastering engineer in Maryland here. I don't know his name specifically, but I think he works at a Towson, and he uses Reaper for this. And what he has done is he had someone write him a script so he uses a BetterMaker external devices. And what BetterMaker is they are EQs and compressors that you can actually control digitally via plugin. So you can save presets, and every time, or you can put a different plugin on each track, and when it goes to that next plugin, it would shift the devices. The problem is that you can't have multiple instances of the plugin open at the same time. So he had somebody write him a Reaper script so that when he clicked on the item, right, when he clicked anywhere in the song, so that would be like here, it would be like me doing this. If he just did that, the script basically said, okay, bypass all of the other, or turn all of the plugins offline except for the one that I'm clicked on. And that allowed him then to use the BetterMaker stuff because it made all of the other plugins go offline, and thus this was the only plugin that was, was usable. So I would assume that there are infinite amounts of ways to script these things. So yes. One of the other things that I do is I actually script for recording. One of the things Reaper doesn't do that Pro Tools does really well is Pro Tools, you can define like an area, and you could say record, and it'll record from the start to the beginning in that area, and then it'll stop. In Reaper, you can do that. You can tell it to start recording and stop recording, but it won't stop playing. So it just keeps playing for like hours. And then granted, it doesn't matter because it's just playing nothing, but it just bothers me. So I created a script that it tells it to not only start recording at the time selection, but then when it hits this other one, it stops recording and stops playing. And that allows me to then just click and select an entire tune, like an item, and then I could just hit my script, and it creates a time selection from the item I've clicked, and it starts the recording. It stops the recording when it gets to the end, stops the playhead, and then erases the time selection. And that way I can print, and I can set that up basically to go, okay, print this, print this, print this, print this, print this. So one of the other things that you can do in Reaper, which is neat, is let's say we're done with this, and I want to export it, right? What I can do, and I don't think I have my shortcuts here, but if I go time selection, from item. Let's see. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a time selection like this. So here's my time selection, and then I create a region, and I can name that region. See, it shows up here as a region, and let's call that crystal spheres. And from crystal spheres, I can then say, okay, let's say I have a whole album. So I have all of these regions and they're all there. I can then go to bounce or render file in here. And I can say, instead of entire project, I can say selected regions. And I can make sure that that region is selected. And then I can come in and I can tell it, what kind of, names do I want to add to it? I want the region name. So I might say, instead of it being Crystal Spheres Master, let's say I want it to say project information, region name. And as you can see here, you'll see it says, for some reason it doesn't say the region name. Let's try this. Or maybe it's just region. Yeah, it's region, not region name. So I'm creating a string of variables to create this. So like if I have a whole album, then what I can do is it will go through and it will basically render each tune with its stuff, with all of its EQs and plugins and automation, and name it correctly and put it in a folder ready to go. And the other thing that you can do, which nobody cares about anymore, but if you really, really wanted to, you can actually use it as a DDP. So what are DDPs? Does anybody know? Okay, a DDP is what you would send to a pressing plant for CDs. Okay, and this is the only program that you can buy that is rolled into a DAW that allows you to create CDs from here if you wanted to. Right? And I say that nobody cares anymore because very few people buy CDs. But if you wanted to, what you can do is you can set up all of these markers. So you can put in CD text so that you can put in different time frames for the tracks to wait before it goes to the next track. So people who grew up in the 80s and 90s like me, there used to be hidden tracks on CDs where you'd get to the last track and then it would like blow through all of these tracks and then there'd be like another song. But that when you tried to rip it onto your computer, you couldn't get at it, right? And you can do all of that in Reaper. So that's why I use Reaper right now. I have WaveLab. I don't ever use it. I use Reaper pretty much exclusively now for mastering. So it really, really, really works out well. And Reaper can be used from start to finish for every single step of your musical journey. That's incredibly important because a lot of other times when you're trying to do stuff, you have to go from different DAW to different DAW. So you go from Pro Tools to WaveLab, or maybe you set things up in Studio One, and then you go to Pro Tools, and then you go to WaveLab. You have all of these different things. Right? But you can do all of that in Reaper and not have to worry about it. It works with MIDI. You can use MIDI if you want, right? So the easy way to do MIDI, I'll just add a MIDI track here for no reason. So that's the interesting thing about Reaper, is that the tracks themselves don't care what you put in it. In fact, I won't even do that. Watch. So here we have a track, this OG track, right? Hold on. That has a project in it, right? Or this process track, it has a project in it. Well, maybe I want to put MIDI in this. So I just go insert, empty new MIDI item. Where did it put it? Should have put it there. Yeah, maybe we'll do another track. Here, we'll do this. There it is. And now we have a MIDI item here. Double click on the MIDI item and now I have my piano roll. And I could do whatever I want. I can put all sorts of MIDI items. And in here, I can alter my velocities, just like you would in Ableton. Yes. You would just go into instruments, and then I'd have to pick, hold on, let me pick, yeah, they have stuff out of the box. I don't know if any of it's any good or not. I'm trying to find like the built-in stuff here. It's the one problem when you have a super ton amount of things. Oh, here we go. We have resample, resynth. So this would be your. There we go. Okay, that was unexpected. But that's how easy you can use this with MIDI. You can actually import. You can start a new track, and let's see if this works. This is out of the box. I've never done this before, but let's try it. Because I'm not a video man, but let's insert a media item, media file, and I'm just going to go to MAGFest 2023, and I'll throw that in there. Hey, and now we have a video. And that's a video, and I would be able to, somewhere in here, I would be able to find, and I don't know where it is necessarily, but I could look at it later, where you can actually put a video where we would see the video. And that's how, and that's all in the same darn project. It doesn't care what you throw in where. I bet if I even took this and dropped it, hey look, now there's a video track in my media track, or a video track in my MIDI track. It just does not care. Yes. Yes, you can. You can. Don't ask me how, but I have seen people do it. So one of the guy, the Reaper blog, he does all of his podcasts, which they film, and they do the whole. I mean, do you still call them podcasts when they film them and put them on YouTube? Okay, so whatever that is, he does that too, and he does all of that in Reaper. So as far as I can tell, according to him, that yes, you can edit video in Reaper. I don't think it's terribly smooth and probably the smartest thing you'd want to do, but you can. But it's great that you can use this for video, because then if you do create, video and you have your audio, you can bring them in and sync them together using SMPTE timecode. You can do all of the stuff that you can do in major things, and then you can render it out. Now, I'm sure you probably can't put in all the cool transitions and all the interesting stuff, but it still would allow you to at least export your audio tracks for further export out of Premiere or Final Cut or whatever you use. So we're at 4:32, and I want to open it up. Just ask me whatever questions you want. It can be on this, anything, whatever. Go ahead. All right, let's start with you. Nothing other than what you tell them you are. So basically, everything about Reaper is on your, it's like in school, on your honor. Like they're like, hey, this is really great. The person who the person who wrote Reaper or started Reaper was the same person who did, what was it called? WinAmp, yes. It was the WinAmp guy. And so once he sold WinAmp to Yahoo, right, for like however billions of dollars, he then was like, hey, I've always wanted to make music. Let's make a DAW. And so that's what he did. No. No, I don't think so. Maybe. Those two are separate. I actually don't know. I've never thought of it. I've always used them as separate things. But yeah, none of the licensing affects the features. Mm-hmm. No, I understand. So yeah, there is. I believe there is a spectral editor in Reaper. I've never used. Like, could you tell me what you use spectral editing for? Mm-hmm. Okay. So I believe that, well, one, you could use Isotope. So Isotope has a spectral editor. It's called Isotope RX. That's what sort of the industry standard is as far as that goes. However, I do actually, let's just look really quick. I hate when people present and they do this, but I'm going to do it anyway. Let's see. There you go. Spectral editing in Reaper by Reaper Mania. So apparently there's a spectral editor in Reaper. Hey, look. Let's look. Yep, there's a spectral editor in Reaper. So there you go. It's there. I've never used it because the only thing I've ever used spectral editing for was I use it in Isotope when I'm trying to get rid of clicks and pops and whatever. And so I go in and I can highlight things and erase them. Yeah, okay. That's cool. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay, cool. And I would assume that with this spectral editing, you could it would be something worth playing with, and let me know how it goes. Like, you don't have to switch. You can just be like, hey, let's figure this out, and see whether it works. But there is spectral editing in Reaper. All right. Who else? Yes. Yes. Uh-huh. Okay. So hold on a sec. Let's open up a new project. Okay. So here we have 2 tracks. Okay, and I'm gonna bring up the mixer. Sorry, this is like hard to look at. So you don't have to use the mixer. There's a bunch of different ways that you can route in Reaper. All right. In Reaper, basically what you want to do is, if I click on the routing button, let's actually do it from here. So here, there's a thing that says route. I click it. And in this, I can have a checkbox that says master send. So that means this is sending whatever the output of this track is to the master output, your master bus. If I unclick that, then it is not. It is essentially muted. Now, you can come in and you can say, hey, I want to send this to track 2. And now I am sending this to track 2. And as you can see here, it's changed. There's a green and a blue. And here there's a green and a yellow. Right? Or maybe I want track 2 to come into track 1. I can go to receives and say, I want to receive from that track. And that's how you would do it. Now, when you are like creating a side chain for a plugin, right? So let's see if we can find a plugin. Let's go here and let's go to, I don't know, that probably has a side chain in it. Let's see. Oh, it doesn't have a side chain. Didn't realize that's what that was. Let's see. Here, look, this has got to have a side chain. Okay. So here we can define what our inputs are for the detector circuit, whether they're the main, auxiliary inputs, and you can come in here in the plugin. Every plugin in Reaper has this here. And what this is defining is what is the input of my channel and what is my output. And so you can actually define, and by clicking, what is the auxiliary and what isn't. And you can go to the I/O and you can choose which I/Os you want, what audio inputs, MIDI inputs maybe if you wanted a MIDI input. So all of that comes from this part right here. That's how you would get at it. And everyone has it. So even if I go to add and I just go to, I don't know, ReQ, has the same thing. So this is something, so like for instance with this, you could say, I only want this to come out of the left channel. Or you could create MS decoding by changing how each one of those works. That's how you route it. See, this is the one thing about Reaper. It's super flexible, and there's things everywhere that you don't find anywhere else in any other DAW. And the problem is they don't look very nice. Like this is like, what is it? What is this? Like you look at it and it's, well, now we're in a matrix. Basically, that's what that is. It's an input-output matrix, and you've just got to like get used to looking and clicking on things to find them. But that's how you do it. But the coolest thing about the other thing you could do is like say, okay, I want to route this channel to this channel. You can actually click and drag. And see how it created a little TRS plug? You drop it, and now that's your send. Or you could do what I did, which is, hold on, delete this. If I want this to be sent there, I can just go like that. And now the top one is a folder, right? But it's still being sent there. And then what you're doing here is you're changing what is being sent up here. The only difference is that this is now no longer going to the master. This is now its master. So this is going up here. In fact, here, let me show you view master track. So here's the master track, and this is going to here. So this is going to here, which is going to there. If I do this, now this is going to here. This is going to here. And this is also going to here. So does that answer your question? Excellent. Yes. The only thing, and I don't think it's a glitch, I think it's a feature that I find immensely annoying, is let's say I'm on measure 3 and I want to scroll. And of course now you're not going to do it. In general, when it, or maybe I don't know, maybe they changed it. In general, it tries to keep that cursor in the center. I don't know why. And so like, you'll click on something and be like, okay, I need to scroll over here. And so you'll be scrolling and then all of a sudden it'll go, bloop, and it'll shoot back to where you were. And so then you have to like, I got to scroll all the way out, you know, and then go, I need to be somewhere in this vicinity, and then scroll all the way back in. Sorry. That's the other thing to get used to is your scroll wheel. When it is over this, is your zoom in, zoom out. If you want to go up and down, you have to scroll over here, which obviously it won't do because I don't have enough tracks. And if you want to go left and right, you have to hold the shift button down. So it is definitely something that you have to go back and forth with. All right. Yes. I honestly don't know if it's lighter, but it is more reliable. In general, when they come out with a new version of Reaper, they just did like 2 minutes ago, they'll come out, and if something's wrong with it, they will either immediately fix it or throw out something that says, oops, we screwed something up, don't install this, or go back to the other one, and they always offer all of the old ones. So you can always go back. But I have never really found Reaper to be terribly resource heavy. It usually has to do with what you're doing in the program itself. Did I see a question over there? Nope. Yes. Right, yeah. No, as far as I know, there is no ecosystem like that unless you were sharing a Google Drive or a Dropbox. I don't know. There may be one in the works. I don't think so, because Reaper is going to try to just be. They try to stay in their lane. They're like, we're a DAW. This is what we do. We're not a cloud service kind of thing. And I personally, have you used the Pro Tools cloud service? Mm-hmm. Right, which is like, right. Well, yeah, or that's just that should be like the moniker under Avid. It works sometimes. I mean, it was something like last night when I was doing my voiceover panel. I opened up Pro Tools and we were going to go over something, and then Pro Tools just crashed, and I was like, okay, fine, we just won't do that. And it was just crazy. But yeah, I don't think. And one thing about that, if you're going to share stuff, don't use Google Drive. Google Drive has a really, as far as I have found, if you're sharing large amounts of files, individual files, they tend to get corrupted. So if you're sharing a project, you have to zip it, put it in Google Drive, they bring it back, they unzip it, kind of thing. However, if you wanted to, like if they had all the audio files, because that's one thing that you can do with Reaper is, I guess I should show you this real quick. Let's do this. Hold on. So when you're making a new project, the very first thing you have to do once you've opened up a new project is you have to go to Project Settings. You click on it, and you want to do Path to Save Media, and you name it something. Right? And that's all you have to do. The reason, I should bring that back. I hit that too fast. The reason why you need to do this is if you don't set this path, it will basically drop all of your files in one spot. It'll just dump them. It'll just throw up all of your files in one spot. If you do the audio files here, it's much better. Let's see what else. That's all you, and you could save this as default project settings, which I'll do because I didn't do it. And that way it'll always do that. Now, the next thing you do, so those are that's the first thing you do. The next thing you do is you go to File and you go to Save Project and you click it. And then you come in here and you decide, okay, what are we going to do? We're going to name it Untitled. No, we'll name it Reaper Panel. Okay, now, you need to check create subdirectory for this project and copy all media into project directory. If you do not do this, wherever you create that Reaper project is where it will dump your files. Okay, if you've selected copy files. If you didn't select copy files, then you will have a Reaper project that has no files that are near it. Like all your files will stay wherever you had them, like in another folder somewhere. And if you separate those two, like you take one and put it on a different computer, then all of a sudden your Reaper project is broken. By the way, that's the same thing with Pro Tools. But this, you have to do create subdirectory. So when you do that and you hit save, and I come out here and I go to Finder, you will now see Reaper Panel is in its own subdirectory here. And in it, there's a folder called Audio Files, and you have your Reaper Panel. So what you could do if you were sharing this with someone is you share the project original, like the audio files and everything. And then what you could do is you could use SyncThing, or you could use Dropbox or Google or whatever to only share the Reaper.rpp. And that means any editing, any plugins, assuming you own the same plugins, any of those settings, they're only found in here. Like the audio files don't get touched. Reaper is a non-destructive editor. So as long as you have the files somewhere, this that's highlighted is where all your edits are. So someone else can edit this, and if they have the files, right, the audio files, they can edit, go back and forth. Then you can edit the same thing, and it'll sync. Now, if you record a new file, like you record a bass part or whatever, then you're going to have to send them the bass track, and they can just stick it in audio files, and when they open it, it'll be there, however you do it. Yes. Yes, the license is perpetual. The only time you will have to buy a new one is if they go to a new number. And I have never been on a new number. And I've been using this for 10 years. No, 7 years-ish, right? In a professional manner. I was using it before, just hitting the still evaluating thing because I was in education mostly. But now, as a small business, I bought the small business license. And all they do is they iterate. Like the latest one was 6.73.224 or something weird like that. And so they'll just keep incrementing it. And you can choose. You don't have to update if you don't want to. And you just keep doing it. And then eventually, you're fine. So it all kind of depends. Any more questions? Yes. Oh, you're talking about like the oh. Yeah, it's because you can. That's the only reason why. Like, I mean, what I just closed there. This is the Reaper default setting. Like, this isn't a skin. This is the Reaper default skin. And like if I want to view, I don't know, the routing matrix, it'll pop up down here. And like if I really use it a lot, but I can put it off to the side, or I can grab it and put it somewhere else. Like you can put it all over the place. And for me, I like that, but it is totally usable, the way it is. Just, it's fine. I think for a while I used a skin that took all the color out of it. It was all basically just black and white, because it was distracting to me while I was doing editing. I was seeing all of these red things and all these blue things and all this stuff, and I was like, if I just want black and white, so it'd be quicker. But no, I think it's fine. I absolutely do think it's fine. This is better than 5. Reaper 5 was a little weird looking, but this is better. So I think default is fine. So you mean like installing the SWS and all that stuff? Oh, that stuff. Oh, man, I just use whatever is there. Like, I don't even pay attention to it. Like, I'm like, I'll sit there and go, is this stuff, I just go to shortcuts and I'm like, okay, that's fine. Yeah, no, I think it's fine. And then if you want to mess with it, you can, but I don't ever have a problem with it. It always seems to work for me. Any other questions? Well, let me make a statement real quick. Let me put this up. Hold on a second. So, people have asked me over the years to do online content. And so my New Year's resolution is that I will be doing online content. And so what I need from everyone here, and one, please come to my other panels. They'll be super interesting, especially the remote possibilities one that's about remote recording, meaning you are in a different spot geographically than your talent, okay, as engineer talent, vice versa. And that's what we'll be talking about. The second one is how to successfully have good music productions, because you're not going to be able to do it all yourself, or at least you shouldn't. Right? You should at least involve somebody else, and how we work with that. So, for instance, I have a lot of clients and a lot of artists where there are certain things that they haven't been doing that make my life harder as a producer, and there are things that I've done that made their life harder as talent. And so I think this way I'll show you what you need to be able to do when you're working with people. The other big thing is, is my Twitter. So I haven't been using it a lot, but I'm going to be using it more. But one of the big things is I want you all to tell me what you would like me to cover. Right? Is it more Reaper content? Is it more, is it how compressors work? All sorts of stuff. This is going to help me figure out what you guys want to watch. My goal with all of this is to basically empower the DIYer with information that is coming from a trusted source, not just some random person who calls themselves a producer. Okay? Someone who works in the business and who's taught and can teach, high level things as like a university. And so I would like your thoughts on because I know what I would like to talk about, but that could be super dry and you may not care. But like I like to talk about sample rates and bit depth, but maybe that's not what you guys are into. And so I would really enjoy you, contacting me via Twitter. You can contact me via my email address, or you can go to the website and look at my artists and then say contact me and go through the website. Doesn't matter. But just give me things that you would like to hear and hear talked about. What are the questions that you have? And I'll do my best to get that content out there. I'm going to start with these things as the content so that you'll be able to access. I know MAGFest is recording it, and it'll be out when MAGFest is done putting it up there. But I will also put some articles up on the website and some YouTube video and things about this. Okay, this was a long panel. You guys stayed all the way to the end, which is fantastic. Thank you very much. Any more questions? No, we're good? All right. Well, I will see you all later.